우와, さすがドリキン土屋圭一たまんねえ。
車が流れないように前のタイヤをこう流して。
お前な、ああって本当にドリフト知ってんのかよ。
でさ、内側に車が流れないように。
カーブっていうのはダセえから走り屋はこうなってんだよ。
分かってないのは池谷。ドリフト中のマシンってのは今のは四輪ドリフトをマスターしてないというね、すげえ高度な回答だよ。
Some of the US items that I noticed, third wiper sprayer for the third wiper, which is actually pretty rare.
There are some holes missing on the top for the spoiler.
Oh yeah, the OEM spoiler. Yeah, it's pretty ridiculous and they're cut like a square too. There's like 20 of them.
One thing that I'd be interested in is to see how well the panhard rod mount is welded to the chassis. That's the part that will receive the end of the panhard that locates the axle. One of the fears I have being on track is if I'm driving really hard, if that thing breaks away, I basically lose the rear of the car and I could crash, right? It'd be interesting to take a look at the underside of that and just see how the welds look and see strong to use as is, or is that something that if you are really driving the car hard and are racing, is that something you want to reinforce?
Yeah, I don't know if that's going to be production intent, but I would not be comfortable with that gap that I already see. You can see daylight through there, so the panels aren't going to be matching up really well. You can fix that. You can see there's a gap between that panel and here, but on this side, it's a little better. To Grant's point, if you want to make this bracket strong, you can run a bead along this whole thing, but you would definitely want to close that gap before you do so.
We've talked a lot about the negatives. I think they've done their best to have the welded nuts on the other side and then all the threaded holes. That's probably a pain to do in manufacturing, but you know, it really helps assembling the car, right? And you find out like, oh wow, this hole was supposed to be threaded.
Is there an example you can show us that you saw?
Spare tire, and then where the gas tank mounts, and then gas tank straps, where the bumper hooks up.
While we're here, I just wanted to ask you guys some questions about this car, because frankly, up until like 2 months ago, I still thought this vehicle was a hoax. There's a lot of rumors and just discussions on, is a Reproduction 86 actually being made? Up until 2 months ago, I thought the answer was no, but clearly, you know, here it is. What does this mean for the community if there are reproduction cars like this that are gonna be available for people to buy?
Personally, I'm a bit stoked. I know that there are definitely some potential quality issues, right? But then having worked on my own car, it's not super straight. I've had to look for panels such as this that were discontinued. Seeing that a company is taking the effort to like actually reproduce these panels and then like a whole car now, to me as an enthusiast, I think that's better because it's keeping these cars on the road.
You know, kudos for this company to reproduce a whole chassis, but I'm not quite optimistic about it. I hope I'm wrong about that.
You and I talked about how cool it would be if someday they would make a Reproduction 86 shell. Right now, you can buy a brand new Escort in Ireland, like from scratch, and they have a turnkey car. You and I both were optimistic that someday this time would come, and it has come, and we're kind of wondering if it's actually too soon.
Not the greatest example, but like the FJ Cruiser came out during the recession, right? Fantastic car, and then, you know, off-roading exploded. The car came out at the wrong time, and that's the problem. What I'm kind of forecasting with this is that, you know, I'm great it's here, but is it too soon? You can still buy an AE86 shell or a non-runner for much less. So what's the value proposition for me to buy, you know, a whole new reproduction shell?
I don't think we would have thought that we'd be seeing 86s selling for $40,000 and bring a trailer. And that time is here now. Good ones are regularly selling for $30,000. It will be interesting as the values of these cars go up, how many more people will be looking to this as an alternative to do their build. Since my car got totaled, I spent, you know, the equivalent of this just getting my car straightened out. So like if this was an option, I would have seriously considered it because I could have, you know, upgraded to a hatchback. I'm very public about like me preferring coupes for how they drive on the track, but I could have upgraded to hatchback, you know, at the same time and just transfer all my stuff over.
A lot of owners who want to do a show build or a restoration or a race car, they actually had to spend the labor to get to this point. Actually, maybe even saved money with a body and white shell as opposed to completely stripping out and then sandblasting. They could have just started with this in the first place.
Meow.
All right, Meow. Hand over your license and registration. Hurry up, Meow. I'm gonna have to give you a ticket on this.
But
No buts, Meow. That's the law. Not so funny now, is it?
A lot of people bring up the question, like, is this car going to be legal to drive? What are your general takes on that? And, like, do we have any references for other cars like Cobras or anything, how people will take a reproduction chassis and how they're able to use it on the road?
I'm not super knowledgeable in this aspect of cars, but I know that Cobras, they will get registered as kit cars, and I think you have to have a VIN assigned to it. Now, for this car is because it's getting shipped to you without a VIN attached to it. So question becomes, how do you get a VIN assigned to it? Is that even possible? Can I register as a kit car? Obviously, for a race car, it's only going to see track time. This won't matter.
Out of all this, I think the biggest issue is going to be the legality if you want to street drive this thing. And so a couple things I'm thinking about worldwide, right? Left-hand drive cars are illegal in Hong Kong. So like literally you would not be able to drive this on the street unless you bought the firewall and everything. Even worse, had Japanese imported cars, and I work on a lot of them. Not only state to state legality, but also in your district, right? The legality might change. I've had military customers ship their Skyline across the world and then across states. Some states want to assign a different VIN to your Skyline now, and they'll stamp and attach a new VIN. And then when he brought it to California, all of a sudden it was like, why does this car have two VINs on it now? Again, if you want to drive this thing on the street, that's probably going to be the biggest hurdle in my mind.
One of the interesting things is, like, if you try to register this vehicle as a kit car, the thing is you have to actually say what it's imitating. In this case, it's imitating an 80s Toyota, right? But in California specifically, that actually brings up some issues, because if you register this as one of the 500 kit cars that you're allowed to get a kit car VIN number for, and you go and you get it and you register it as an 80s type vehicle, that actually does mean that you need to have emissions equipment for an 80s vehicle. So normally, where if you have a Shelby or some kind of Mustang and you go down that route, it's not an issue because it's all pre-smog. But this is a reproduction of a post-smog era vehicle, and it has a whole nother set of hurdles that would make it difficult to actually register this vehicle for the road.
You guys can do your own research, but the problem with California is not only has to be federally legal, but also California CARB compliant. And the California CARB compliant is the killer. There's places in the United States where it's federally legal. There's no such thing as emissions testing, but only in California, 1976 and newer vehicles, we have a biannual smog check. There was no smog check probably in 1976. Cars didn't have catalytic converters or emissions devices back in the 70s. But for whatever reason, California still wants your 70s vehicle to be modern car compliant emissions wise.
It's pretty interesting that we have one of the biggest car cultures in the world, yet it's one of the hardest states to play with cars. Vintage cars, at least. This is very much hearsay and not confirmed, and do not hold me to this. One of the things that I was told from someone that actually is producing vehicles that will be available as a kit car to buy, he was saying that in the eyes of the law, they had a completely legal car. If you took that firewall and actually put that firewall onto this vehicle, this would then become that car from the viewpoint of the law. It's really the firewall with a stamped VIN that is what they consider the vehicle, and the rest of these could just be parts that are attached to it. Now again, please do your own research. This is just what I've been told. That's something that we could look into as possibly a route that would allow someone to be able to drive this car on the street.
If you guys have made it this far in the video, please make sure to like and subscribe. This video has been brought to you guys by us at Battle Garage Racing Service. If you haven't heard of us before, we provide performance and restoration parts for the AE86. We also provide performance and OEM parts for the BRZ and the GR86 platforms. Even if you don't own one of these cars yet, we make some pretty cool in-house products like our ITB shot glasses, license plate frames, t-shirts, and a whole lot more. Thank you all for your continued support. Now let's get back to the video.
So we spent some time looking over this car and just seeing how it's constructed, just making some general notes about the vehicle. Based on what you guys have seen now, like, who do you think this car is for? Is this gonna be right for the restoration crowd? Is this better for someone that has like a drift car?
As of right now, I think this would fit a motorsports customer the best. I mentioned that because you can still buy a Corolla GTS hatchback if you wanted to. Maybe a non-running one for the same amount that you bought this body in white for. But depending where you live, if you're building a full-on show car or a motorsports vehicle, it may actually cost you more money to buy the donor and then strip it down to get to this point versus just buying this in the first place. Two countries I believe this car would actually be great for. So in Ireland, whatever their drift organization, let's just call it like Ireland D1, their rules are so that AE86s are still competitive in that drift series. So, in a climate like that where the cars are easy to rust out and corrode, well, there's actually no more donor cars probably in Ireland. We've talked to DMAC from Ireland about this. There's literally no donors. This would, be perfect for them if I'm gonna build, a D1 competition car. And then our first visit to SEMA in 2019, I was shocked by how many people from the Middle East like classic Toyotas. And I actually had a few gentlemen ask if I could source them a clean California AE86 shell. Well, we don't have to do that anymore because this, right? So my vote is motorsports customer.
I agree with that. I think the motorsports customer is going to be the main one right now because they would be more likely to like strip the chassis and then actually build it up from the ground up. I know from at least the restoration standpoint, I don't know if Corollas have gotten this pedantic yet, but I know some show car people, they want all numbers matching. They want the VIN to be original. They will not take a kit car, right? So they're more likely to just buy a chassis and rebuild that rather than a body in white. But I think there's definitely a place for body in whites, especially in racing.
Well, my vote is also for motorsports. And frankly, if there are any questions about welds, or if there's enough of them, or if they're in the right places, or even the type of weld, that'd be a great time to address it when you've got the car apart like this, as you're starting to weld in your roll cage and do other reinforcing. If you're that kind of person with those kind of skills or availability with a shop able to do that work, it'd be a great time to do it. And it allows you to really make this into what you want it to be. And you don't have to just accept it for how it is at the moment.
Wait, what is
It's
it?
an extra piece of metal that's on the
Oh,
outside.
nice.
The other part that didn't line up